This one is just so incredibly difficult to understand. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin. Today I want to talk about the poisoning of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny with the nerve agent Novichok. So for those that don't know, Alexei Navalny has been a long-standing opposition figure to Vladimir Putin in the Russian Federation. That Alexei has been brought up on all kinds of politically motivated corruption charges. He's been arrested for all kinds of protests. But basically, he is a mainstream opposition political figure who has the most number of votes other than the United Russia Party, which is led by Vladimir Putin. Now, recently he fell sick after a meal in Russia. He was taken to hospital, fell unconscious, and his family applied to have him relocated to Germany for medical treatment because they suspected a poisoning. This transfer was approved, and he was moved to Germany. And then subsequently, Angela Merkel has come out publicly and said, look, it's actually beyond any doubt Alexei Navalny has been infected with the nerve agent Novichok. Now, Novichok is the calling card of the Russian FSB. It's only available to the Russian state. It's not something that common criminals are going to get their hands on. You will also recall that this was used in an assassination, an incredibly brazen assassination in the UK against Mr. Skripal. It infected his daughter. It infected a number of police officers. And the UK had to respond. The US under President Trump, response was actually quite severe. It expelled all basically diplomats from America for a period of time. And yet this seems to have happened again in an even more brazen way, in a sense, because we're talking about a very senior figure who is a public figure in Russia. So it's something the whole world has an interest in because it's an attack to the very concept of pluralistic democracies. And the thing that makes it incredibly difficult to understand is that if you've made the decision to assassinate Alexei Navalny, right, that is the most profound political move that you're likely to make in your professional life. And yet he was allowed in an unconscious state to be put on a plane and to leave the country. So what that tells me is that I suspect, and this is a speculation, of course, I suspect that Vladimir Putin did not authorize this attack. Now, I have Russian friends who would tell me in previous cases that only the Russian president would have the power to decide something like this. And certainly Vladimir Putin would have to give the appearance that he was in control. He could never come out publicly and say, I didn't authorize this wasn't me, because he will look ridiculous and he will look like he's not in control of his own security forces. There's no way he can say this publicly. But what I suspect happened, because if he did authorize this, Navalny would be dead, right? Now, there's no way that the Russian government would have allowed Navalny to get on a plane and leave Russia to get treatment in Germany in an unconscious state if Vladimir Putin himself had authorized this assassination. That's just what I believe. What I suspect did happen is that someone like Navalny falls sick, he gets admitted to hospital. Someone would have immediately gone to Putin and say, look, this has happened. Now, Putin would have said, well, what's the cause? And they say, well, we're not sure. Some people suspect poison. Well, then what I suspect would have happened is Putin, shocked by this unauthorized move, would have said, okay, we'll make sure he's okay. And then when the request comes in to transfer him to Germany, Putin would have said, yes, do that, and make sure that he recovers. It is highly significant that Angela Merkel herself came out publicly and said that this was Novichok, because Angela Merkel has a close personal relationship with Vladimir Putin. This is not something that's talked about much, but they get along extremely well. Angela Merkel grew up in East Germany, where Vladimir Putin was posted during his previous career. Putin speaks perfect German. They can talk to one another without any kind of translators or anything like that. They call each other on weekends. They've both been in European affairs for a long period of time as long-standing political leaders. And so they have a deep respect for one another. And so Angela Merkel would never have come out publicly and said this without giving Putin a heads up. So she would have called Vladimir Putin and said, look, Navalny, he's in a serious but stable condition. We've done the tests. We can confirm it was Novichok nerve agent. We're absolutely convinced of this fact. I'm going to have to go out publicly and announce it. And they would have had a discussion about this, right? So there would be a lot going on behind the scenes that we have yet to be informed about. Now, President Trump himself has said, look, we haven't got the evidence yet. Once we do, the response will be incredibly serious because it is a next level kind of move, right? To be allowed to do this and to get away with it would be completely unacceptable in the 21st century, let alone for a major nation state. So the response has to be quite powerful. Now, the obvious response from Germany is to end the Nord Stream pipeline that is going to provide gas to Germany from Russia. Now, this is something that the Americans have been banging on about for a while, and Angela Merkel has resolutely said that it's not, get out of our affairs, America. Yes, I know we're allies, and I know you give us everything, but this is in the long-term infrastructure interest of Germany to be increasingly dependent on Russia for cheap gas. And now, the other thing that makes it very significant that Merkel made this announcement is she would know that the Nord Stream pipeline is going to be under scrutiny with this attack. This is an obvious thing for her. So she had no interest to lie. She had no interest to come out and accuse Russia of something that it didn't do. This is a personal embarrassment and a lack of political capital that she is losing as a consequence of this allegation. So we can trust the allegation. We can say with high confidence that yes, Navalny was in fact poisoned with Novichok because Angela Merkel has no interest in making this up. And a lot of things are made up about Russia, as we know. We saw this with several years of Russia hysteria in Washington with President Trump. But in this case, the allegation must be true because Merkel is a cautious person by nature, so she wouldn't run out and lead from the chin. And secondly, she would dearly like to not have to make this allegation. So we can say that this is a real thing. And Putin himself, who has been around for a while, who can't personally feel threatened by Navalny. Navalny has never developed the force of political constituency to really overthrow Putin or anything like that. It just seems so hard to believe that Putin, with all his political skill and experience, would have been so foolish as to authorize something like this himself, and then having authorized it, ballsed it up so badly, right? It seems incredible to me. What seems far more likely is a deep sense of bureaucratic incompetence within Russia, where people are doing things beyond their own authority and taking on kind of initiatives that they think are in the best interests of Putin or the Russian state and going rogue, right? But nevertheless, Putin does lead a government in which this was allowed to happen, and therefore he does need to be held responsible for this attack, and the West must respond. Now, the Nord Stream pipeline is something that the Germans should end, and I'm sorry, Merkel, but I think your commitment to this and your attempt to separate this pipeline from every other aspect of relations with Russia is no longer tenable. The response is obvious. And if you fail to end this pipeline, then you are going to be a perpetual embarrassment on the world stage. in perpetuity, like a humiliation to the German people themselves. The way the Americans should respond, obviously, I do commend Trump on not letting out in front of the evidence. I think that too many people do that. But we can presume that evidence will be forthcoming, and then the US government will then have to respond. Now, how to do that, I think, should be tied to what's going on in Belarus. Trump should massively, not symbolically, massively increase the force deployments to the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, in order to send a strong deterrent message to Russian intervention in Belarus. Because at the moment, as you know, there are, on the one hand, you've got this assassination attempt in Russia for a major opposition figure, but also massive and increasing instability in Belarus, where the significant opposition figures have had to flee across to Lithuania, huge uprisings in the country where a whole bunch of political opponents have been arrested and thrown in jail, and a high probability that Lukashenko will lose control of the situation, the Belarusian leader will lose control of the situation. He has a deal with Putin that they've announced publicly that if the instability gets too severe in Belarus, Russian police forces will be brought into Belarus to stabilize the situation. So in short, Russian military will go into Belarus and take over, essentially, to prevent any kind of Western liberalization. Now, what the Americans can do is, in response to this assassination attempt with Navalny, massively increase the force deployments to the Baltic to demonstrate to the Russian Federation that any intervention in Belarus could be met with severe force. And I say this, not lightly at all. I am a strong proponent of improving relations with Russia, that we need to, at some point, bring Russia into the family of European nations to tease them away from China's orbit, because they're an essential component to American long-term strategy. And so there needs to be some off-ramps, massive deployments to the Baltic states, to deter intervention in Belarus and as a response to the assassination attempt, but also an outstretched hand to Putin and say, look, you've got to radically change your approach to this. Otherwise, you're just going to become more and more isolated to the point where not only will NATO remain on your western border, but it'll spread through all, Belarus, Georgia, and the Americans will see that happens. I think that the Russians need to really think through what is an appropriate way to deal with these, pesky opposition figures. That the use of a government, state-orchestrated, invented nerve agent is not an acceptable way to manage this, and that it is going to justifiably lead to fears among the Russian periphery, because if the Russians are willing to do that to their own opposition figures, then there is absolutely no reason to suspect that they would hesitate in doing this abroad. And also just the questions of the Russian internal stability. I'm skeptical that Putin authorized this, because he doesn't strike me as that stupid. And if he did authorize it, I don't think he would have failed in such a humiliating way. So I suspect Putin probably wants Navalny to live and to pull through. But he needs to get control fast and demonstrate that that's been done, and show a certain degree of contrition for this act by exposing this, perhaps even exposing how Novichok is invented and how it's best treated. Some kind of mea culpa on behalf of the Russian people, and not just the reflexive sense of pride and denial that the Russians always engage in. So I think this is a regrettable situation, but it does provide an opportunity for America to massively ramp up its deployment in the Baltic. I think that's important at this point where Belarus is so teetering. And that's my view. We will get more facts as things emerge. And I'm very curious as to see, what happens in the next couple of months. I'll definitely let you know. Do you have any thoughts on this issue? Please definitely let me know. Leave your comments below. If you find value in this discussion, please like and subscribe. We talk about this stuff all the time, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.